Notes on Trump written during the campaign. Tuesday, October 11th, 2016 at 2:56 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This whole non-issue of Trump's horrendous dialogue dug up in the now infamous bus video is evidence that the Clinton campaign is worried about the election and they are feeling desperate. Their response is quite cunning, although subtly dishonest as to be expected. But that's what works with the American people. Excuse me. Since hearing, speaking, thinking, or even feeling the truth in general is not something Americans are accustomed to, and in fact, hearing the truth scares them. Americans want to be lied to. They want their politicians to feed them total bullshit, which is exactly what is happening in this country. With hysterical and historical anti-veracity. They want their politicians to feed them total bullshit, which is exactly what occurs in this country, with hysterical and historical anti-veracity. As we all know, politicians are professional liars, and they are the second most successful group of professional liars in human history, after only the Christian church. This is why so many of our politicians attended law school, when they should have been preparing for a career in public service, so-called, by studying political science, history, sociology, and most of all, philosophy. The tactic of bombarding the American electorate, in which the news media are conspiring in, with this petty, unimportant, non-essential nonsense, is a slick politician stratagem, the purpose of which is to divert people's attention from the real crimes of this election year's competitors, a short list of which includes, but is certainly not limited to, Bill and Hillary Clinton's history of pay-to-play peddling of governmental favors, which has resulted in much of their enrichment, Bill Clinton's sexual crimes, and Hillary's use of state and federal governmental power to harass, intimidate, threaten, and even possibly murder accusers or detractors. Hillary's installation of a private mail server connected to the State Department's computer network, indubitably the most dangerous threat to American safety and security since the Rosenberg defection to the Soviet Union in the 1950s. And possibly worst of all, her dishonest and illegal deletion of email messages from that server, which constitutes destruction of evidence and obstruction of justice, which takes us back to the era of Watergate and President Nixon's deletion of the missing minutes from the White House tapes. Keep this in mind. Remember, they keep coming up with contrived, contorted, topologically squeezed ways of interpreting things that Trump says or things that Trump does with Watergate. But just like I keep saying, I've been saying for years now, I've been saying since it started, the purpose of the Russia investigation is to protect Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and their surrogates. Okay? The fact that few people seem to see through the smokescreen created by the Clinton propaganda team and demand that the debate move forward from this American bullshit reflects pretty poorly on the idea and practice of democracy in general, and on the American electorate, including and especially the news reporters and editorialists. And basically, reporters are no longer reporters but serve as surreptitious editorialists themselves, who control the minds of the American electorate. Americans buy what they're told to buy. Remember the pet rock phenomenon of the early 70s. But of far more serious concern, Americans think what they're told to think, which brings me to another interesting sidelight of the American war on truth, which is the question of who was responsible for the death threats made against Julian Assange, which deterred him from standing on the balcony of the Ecuadorian embassy in London last month to announce the release of more wiki documents potentially harmful to the Clintons' cause. There have been so many accusations against the Clintons over the decades of waging intimidation wars and projects of this type, that it is difficult for any truly honest commentator, from what I see is basically just me, from suspecting that searching somewhere down the Clinton chain of command, one may find the answer to this question. Someone who cares about America's future should look into this question further. In fact, I think a large number of Americans should look into this question further. But unfortunately, of course, this will never happen. Tuesday, October 11, 2016, 3:03 p.m. We need a non-politician atop the executive branch, if only for one term, and if only to show history that it still can be done. The last non-politician in the White House, Jimmy Carter, he wasn't a non-politician because he was a governor. Jimmy Carter was a penisless wimp. If you can say anything about Donald Trump, you cannot say that he is a penisless wimp. Thursday, October 20th, 2016, 2:46 p.m. Donald Trump constantly reminds me of Ronald Reagan, even down to his hairdo. Now, I hated Reagan, and while I believe he did some good for the country, I maintain he did far more harm. But one form of praise I will admit to about Reagan is he knew how to deal with our foes on the international stage. He got rid of the Soviet Union and effectively ended most of the potential dangers of the Cold War. And I have some personal inside information on the development of those successful policies from the time in the mid-'80s when I worked as research assistant in criminology as an undergrad at the University of California, while my wife worked with Charles Towns, the physics Nobel laureate and inventor of the laser and a primary advisor on Star Wars. This is yet another reason why we need a Trump presidency. We're in a lot of danger in this country right now in all ways, but especially militarily, including increasing terrorist attacks within our borders and increasing influence and power of Russia, China, Syria, Iran, North Korea, and etc. Donald Trump has the same no-nonsense aggressiveness that Reagan had, but he's even more aggressive than Reagan was. We're in a lot of trouble in this country right now, and people don't recognize this fact enough because they're too busy developing obesity, getting their scrotums or labia majori pierced, or purchasing more and more and more lecking devices. Internal attacks by invaders are accelerating like a proverbial snowball. We all know this. But what are we going to do about it? Electing Hillary Clinton would be the worst possible answer to this question. I hope I'm wrong. But if Clinton gets in, and I knew all along that she didn't have a chance, or should I say if the Clintons get back in, or as I like to say, the Clinton unit, which now includes a new generation of thieves running the Clinton Foundation named Chelsea, terrorist attacks in this country will increase by several thousand% immediately. Hillary Clinton is hardly the walking, talking battleship that was Margaret Thatcher, or even, giving her the maximum benefit of the doubt, Madeleine Albright. If she can't even stand up to Trump, and we have seen how debate moderators had to protect or shield this poor, helpless female from being spray-painted with excess male testosterone hormone by Trump, how on earth or in the entire Milky Way galaxy will she stand up to Putin, or the Maoist leftovers in China, or the Shia mutants in Iran, or the mutants running the Islamic State, or to anyone else for that matter? See, part of the problem is that this is a society deeply in hate with itself at every level, down to the walking, talking, breathing individual. American women especially are in deep hate with themselves, as a group and individually. Many observers have concluded that what I call post-mortem America has, at least since the end of the 60s decade, which ended about 1975, is a nation of narcissism, clarified Christopher Lasch, The Culture of Narcissism, Twain and Campbell, The Narcissism Epidemic, or Robert Payne's The Corrupt Society. Women are the most narcissistic element of our population, it's sad to say. It's sad to say because their narcissism is having a real visible effect on our children, and this is one of the reasons that our children are walking around with purple hair and bones drilled through their septums, let alone walking into public schools with shotguns blowing their fellow students away, or worst of all, developing into homosexuals, as every single person's body in this country well knows. But few will admit homosexuality is an attachment disorder with severe narcissistic features, and there are very successful psychodynamic-based therapeutic interventions that modify and mollify this mental disorder. Postmortem American women are so extremely self-hating, so desperate for any modicum of self-respect, so destructively demanding of narcissistic mirroring from society at large, that they would vote for any female candidate running for any office, regardless of how many U.S. ambassadors and other Americans her malfeasance and total incompetence gets killed, regardless of how many times she seriously endangers national security with total stupidity, and then not only lies under oath about it to Congress, the FBI, and etc., but then, to offend America even further, openly admits to accidentally destroying evidence subpoenaed after receiving the subpoena, or how many foreign agents she peddles influence into our policy-making structure to, simply and completely for her and her husband's and now her daughter's personal gain. It doesn't matter how much military prowess we have in defending ourselves against terrorists. What matters exclusively is their perception of how much strength we possess to defend ourselves against terrorists. If they perceive that we won't defend ourselves decisively or that we will provide a weak, ineffectual response, as we have been doing for the past 8 years, they will attack us. If they perceive that we will hunt them down to the last man and destroy them to the last man, that we will be proactive and preemptive in defending ourselves from terrorism, they will be much less likely to attack us. A female president would be a green light for terrorists to crank it up loudly, to really come after us. Men in Arabic Islamic societies, especially the radical wing that is producing these terrorists, suffer from wounded and insecure masculinity. They fear and resent women generally. That is why women are degraded in most of their societies to the point where they are less than second-class citizens. They value men who bring victory in war above all other men, to quote a line from the movie Lawrence of Arabia. They perceive that a woman cannot bring victory in war. It's a form of ego defense that defends against their fear of femininity in general. It doesn't matter whether any of these conclusions are applicable or not. They perceive it. And that is all that matters in terms of our effectively dealing with this problem. Excuse me again. With Hillary Clinton as president, we will have 9/11 on a monthly basis. Oftentimes, when I observe what is happening to this country, I get the feeling that in my sleep or during some moment of daydreaming, I have been transported into some parallel but very inferior universe. How can a person who has been shown to have perpetrated the crimes described above and many other crimes, who has openly admitted to them, how can such a person be allowed to run for political office at any level in this country at all? Or be free and not in jail? It's the most bizarre thing I have ever seen in my 500 years on this planet, in this nation. How can such an individual escape prosecution for these mistakes, as our politically correct sickness would justify it by? Why or how would any even mildly conscious American citizen be willing to vote for such a disgusting specimen? My answer to these questions is simply that postmortem America has not only become a narcissistic society, but has actually degenerated even further into a full-blown psychotic society, on a par with the period of the Santa Hermandad in 15th century inquisitorial Spain. You never expect the Spanish Inquisition. The Khmer Rouge, Pol Pot period in 20th century Cambodia, or the witch hunt period in puritanical New England, and that vast majority of Clinton supporters are trying to satisfy psychotic needs in their support for her. My fellow Americans, our empire is dying. There is no escaping this fact. Anyone with an IQ above 50, or with even 20/40 vision, can see this fact. We cannot reverse its decline, but we can slow that decline down. The worst mistake we can make that would accelerate our own deaths and those of our children and children's children is to fail to seize this historic opportunity to once and for all rid ourselves of these southern trash. Yes, Hillary is a suburban Midwesterner. I am aware, but she devolved into a southerner, and take no offense, since I myself am also a southerner, and believe it or not, you can actually witness her feigning a southern accent in early videos from their gubernatorial regime. Check it out for yourself. The Clinton family, the Clinton gang, out of national politics completely and forever, knowing what Arkansans now know about the harm that the Clintons did to their state when they exercised power there. It would be hilarious to see how they would react if, after the country rejects her, they try to put up shop again back in that state. They would be run out of Arkansas on a rail. Think about it. How much worse could her legacy get if Hillary is elected in 3 weeks? Picture in your mind this horror. Imagine a Chelsea Clinton gubernatorial come senatorial come presidential run. You may laugh, but that could be next. Don't tell me I didn't warn you. Saturday, October 22nd, 2016 at 12:58 p.m. Attention, idiot Americans who won't even notice when we transform into a de facto and de jure dictatorship, because you couldn't give a shit less about anything you can't eat, fuck, or accelerate. Under intense pressure from our State Department, translation, Obama administration, Clinton campaign cronies, and DNC infrastructure, The Ecuadorian embassy, where Julian Assange has received refuge asylum sanctuary since August 2012, from CIA attempts to frame him for crimes everybody knows he didn't commit, has cut off his internet access to keep him from publishing more WikiLeaks documents that may have an effect on the current campaign for president and especially may have an adverse effect on the Clinton campaign by publicizing more truth about Clinton's endless lies. So, people like the guy below are using megaphones outside the embassy to at least update Assange on the latest news. This is what you have in store for you, American idiots, when you allow these people to stay in power in this country. You are completely oblivious to the danger that our government's silencing critics represents and will ultimately lead to. You are slowly being taken control of by a Tyrannosaurus Rex federal government, and you're too busy playing with your tech toys and masturbating to give a flying fuck about what is happening to you. One day you're going to wake up, American idiot, look out your window to see what you have allowed this country to degenerate into irreversibly. On that day, you're going to wish you were dead. Monday, October 24th, 2016 at 10:29 a.m. Donald Trump may be the most brilliant negotiation strategist in the history of American business. This may be one of the reasons he is so filthy damn rich. He is an expert at creating leverage to attain the most favorable terms possible in a business deal. This is part of what we hate about Trump. But it also may suggest what he should be one of the best deal-making presidents we have had since FDR, but both internally with the legislative and other branches and elements of government, but also and especially externally, internationally in dealing with foreign friends and foes. Retarded American idiots, including people in the Clinton campaign, have been decrying Trump's relationship with Vladimir Putin. Has it ever occurred to these people that pretending to befriend some international leader may be part of a long-term negotiation strategy for getting the best of him and his allies? Of course not, since, as I have pointed out many times before, the contemporary American idiot couldn't give a flying fuck about anything he or she can't eat, fuck, or accelerate. This is the great dilemma of our age. The recent, since World War II, great migration of the American populace from citizen human being to bona fide member of the American herd of cattle. When you are a hedonistic slob, as most Americans, excuse me, when you are a hedonistic slob, as most Americans obviously are, it makes sense to follow along the easiest path with the other lemmings and conform to whatever the news media are instructing you to conform with. This is what I refer to as post-mortem America. Tuesday, November 1st, 2016 at 12:52 p.m. Mauvaise foi consciousness. Mauvaise foi consciousness. Excuse me. Supporters of Clinton and the Democrats are victims of mauvaise foi consciousness. Actually, everybody in the country, and in fact everybody in the civilization, is possessed of mauvaise foi consciousness and resentment. That is why we are dying. Tuesday, November 1st, 2016 at 12:42 p.m. When women maneuver themselves into positions where they have an influence on a society's policymaking, due to the decadence, hedonism, blindness, and outright stupidity of their men, it is already a sign that that society is in decline or is already dead. Women destroy civilizations. Oh, and by the way, I love women. And I really do.